Hi, Angela.
Hello. Good morning.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
Sure, happy to be here.
Yeah, we are live and we'll go around and introduce ourselves. Some folks are straggling in. And there are more people here than you. Oh, there, you can see everybody. Sorry. Um, we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves and then turn it over to you for the record.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Kathleen James from Manchester.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington. Michael Southworth, Caledonia, 2.
Dara Torrey, Washington too.
Graham Kleppner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
David Gleason, intern for Kleppner.
Audrey Lida, interning for Representative Burke.
Gabrielle Molina, down the Mark.
So thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are, and I'll let you introduce yourself in one moment, but we have been taking quite a bit of testimony on S202 about plug-in solar. So we're here to, we'd like to hear what landlords have to think. So over to
Okay.
you for the
All
record.
right. Great. Thank you. And good morning. My name is Angela Zajkowski. I am the director of the Vermont Landlords Association. We are a trade organization in Vermont for housing providers. I also am a practicing attorney, and I have a private law practice, so I'm pretty familiar with reading laws and rules and understanding how things interconnect. And my primary focus in that practice is representing housing providers. I guess I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to learn a whole bunch about portable solar energy generation devices, um, because otherwise I would not have had this opportunity. I think the thing that I want to stress to the committee is the concern of landlords and housing providers is safety in the building. So safety of the structure itself, but also safety for residents who are living in the building. And so anytime we're talking about making changes to systems, that creates some concern that we're going to go down a path where we may have some unintended safety issues that arise. And I think, you know, there is a lot to be said for offering options for folks as we see utility costs increase, as we see push for alternative options and solutions, but I just want to make sure we're doing it in a way that is safe and protecting folks, and that we're not going to end up with issues like fires or shocks or building damage that is going to cause units to come offline, or create unsafe conditions. So looking at S202, I think one of the big bonuses or benefits here is the requirement that these devices comply with the UL 3700 standards, so that the device itself is compliant with that. And what I understand also comes with that is that there's specific installation parameters that go with that certification and listing. So those certification installation requirements deal with dedicated circuits, bidirectional GFCIs. So like these are things that are going to help create and prevent some of these safety challenges that I think have been noted related to these devices. But I think the concern is that tenants may not fully appreciate that, that there are specific requirements and specific standards that need to be followed. And your average tenant's going to go out to Google or Amazon, and they're going to search portable solar energy device, and they're going to purchase whatever. And it's not going to meet these requirements, and it's not going to meet these standards. And so having a law, and I noticed that it's not in the law, but that as drafted, but I was asked to comment on the Virginia version that I know you folks are looking at. So having a system where it's the tenant just notifies the landlord afterwards and it's permissive is going to create a situation where we're going to run into some of these safety compliance issues. So if the landlord's involved at the beginning and has to grant permission for the tenant to even take the next step, the landlord can be the one that says it has to meet these requirements, this has to be done, these other things have to be done before sort of we're out of the barn, so to speak. And so I think just having this blanket, like you can do it and then let your landlord know, is going to create a situation where tenants are buying things that aren't in compliance, then have to set it back, or it gets plugged in and something happens, someone gets shocked, a building burns down. Like that is not what we want to see happen here.
That is definitely not what we want to see happen here. So I'm glad you're here to talk to us about this. So we've been on a journey with S202. We have taken a ton of testimony, and we're gonna have some final testimony from UL just to make sure that we all understand clearly and get it on the record again what UL 37 requires. So we're at the point of thinking it probably requires all of the safety considerations that have been raised to us in testimony, but we need to hear that for sure.
Yeah.
Or find out that that's not the case. Where I have firmly landed on this bill, and without having decided on the landlord thing, but on the broader need for this bill, is that without this bill, anybody can buy one of these online right now, which they can. I Googled them.
Yep.
So I could buy one tomorrow and plug it in. And there are no standards in place and no state law in place. And so if something happens, there is nothing to say that I broke the law.
Correct.
Or that, that I did anything wrong. And so I'm feeling like the bill is important and itself. And what we're trying to balance now is how to make sure that tenants would have some opportunity to take advantage of these devices, honestly, to be perfectly honest, down the road as they become UL certified, as they become cheaper, as they become more attractive to people. So this is a little bit of a proactive. I think we're being proactive. But yeah, the landlord thing is a tough one.
Right.
Oh,
Sorry, I was gonna say, I think the concern is that my understanding is to be compliant with the UL 37 standards, it's going to require a dedicated circuit. That's going to require electrical work, and in sort of these types of residential buildings, that's, done by a licensed electrician. It requires a permit from, or at least electrical work permits to fire safety and an inspection. So, I think if those are accurate for the UL 37, that's going to create some protections. And I don't disagree with you that I think we need something here, because there's ones that are created that have been tested and certified and are safe, and then there's like everything else. And getting the ones that are safe for people to use, I think makes the most sense. What my concern is that with that UL certification, it requires this electrical work. So I think the landlord is going to have to be involved and is going to have to give permission. And it's going to have to be some conversation between the landlord and tenant about how this looks, who's going to pay for it, how do these get attached, how are they used? And so I think having just a purely permissive standpoint in that relationship is going to be problematic. I think some language, even in the Virginia bill, it talks about, a tenant shall not utilize or install these devices if it were to require alterations of the building's premises, wiring, electrical panels without express written approval of the landlord. I mean, even just something like that would be sufficient to just say, look, you have to get permission to do this.
Yeah. Rep. Gardner has a question, but I just want to flag that language from Virginia.
Yeah,
that you-
that's the
I read-
subsection E. I mean, it's on page 2 of the Virginia law.
Page
It's,
2 sub E.
yeah, it's down at the bottom, line 116 to 118.
Okay, Rep. Kleppner?
So Angela, you are right that as far as we understand, UL 3700 requires a dedicated circuit. And they are also talking about a unique receptacle and a unique plug to protect tenants from shock hazard or any user.
Correct.
And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's electrical work in the building, and you pointed out this raises a bunch of questions. And one I'm particularly interested that you raised is whether you have any thoughts yet as to who pays for putting in the circuit and installing the outlet.
Right. And I think that's always the question. And it generally, if work like this is done in a building, it's at the cost of the landlord, which I think, as we understand, any extra expenses, any additional items like this cause rents to go up and cause increase in rents. Now, that's not to say that if these devices become more popular, that having this type of core dedicated system in your building could be considered an amenity at some point, right? It could be something that entices tenants to rent from you down the road if they become more popular, or maybe it's something new builds consider putting in as a, hey, look, we have fiber internet, and you can plug in your portable solar energy generation device. So I think, my experience is these kinds of costs are borne by the housing providers, which then means they're turned around and passed down in rents and what the landlord charges for renting the unit.
Got it. Thank you.
Rep. Southworth?
Do you have any sense from your members about concerns of this creating an insurance issue for them?
That is definitely a concern. And I don't know if folks have heard from the insurance industry about how they're handling this or not, but
We're trying.
Very vague.
very vague. And I think some of it probably depends on, are we following the UL 3700 standards, which require all of these safety installations? And, does that mitigate the risks enough? Right? That's always the question. Have we mitigated these risks enough with these safety requirements, with dedicated circuits, the dedicated receptacle or special receptacle to prevent shock hazards, bidirectional GFCIs? Like, there's, some components here that I think reduce those factors. But all of this are concerns. And I think I share your concerns about the ordering stuff off Amazon, plugging it in, right? That's our worst case scenario for everybody, insurance folks, housing providers, other tenants, because that feels like the least safe option here.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm thinking.
That's okay. So we talked, Scott, we talked about UL 3700, and I brought up to speed on where we are with all of its requirements and making sure that we have a clear and really accurate understanding of what 3700 includes. And so we're getting to that soon. They're coming in next week. And then we talked about a specific section of the Virginia statute, page 2, subsection E, line 16 through 18.
Yeah, I think actually that refers to a ratio billing system, which is not something we have in Vermont. So,
I think it was more to do with permission required if the unit has to be rewired.
Yep.
One's
Oh, okay.
116 to 180.
116 to 118.
So-
well,
I had just pointed to that language because it speaks to
possible dedicated circuit business.
right, requiring permission if if the installation requires wiring,
Yeah,
changes to electrical panel, and my understanding of the UL 3700 standards is that it would.
Does.
Because, and it does.
well, the Virginia law also references on the same page, higher up here, line 95 to 97 or so, 8. A device that has an output of not more than 391 watts, not requiring alteration to wiring. So that's the question that we have for UL that we don't know the answer to yet. But with those devices, low power devices like that, be able to be plugged into any circuit and not require a dedicated circuit and not require a specialized plug. So that's one question that we have, but those might be safe on their own.
Well, we don't know. And I think the way the Vermont one is drafted is that it has to comply with this UL 3700.
Yes, we'll get detail on.
Right. So, and I think from what I understand, look, I'm learning with all of you. This was a big data dump here for me. With a lot of this. But I think my ask of the committee would be tenants need to get permission from the landlord to utilize these devices in the property. You know, whether it's just a plug-in kind, the lower than 391 watts, if that's the way this is going, or they're the UL 3700 compliant ones, because I think there needs to be a conversation between these two parties about the building and the systems, whether it's going to work, whether there's safety concerns, and without getting landlord permission, tenants not going to be aware of all of the things that are in the building and whether the systems could even safely manage something like this. So that would be my ask, is just to make it with permission of the landlord.
Sure, absolutely. Another question that occurs to me, and maybe somebody's asked this, on line 99 of the Virginia bill, it talks about landlords who own more than 4 dwelling units not being able to prohibit a tenant from getting using one of these devices. Under all these circumstances, all the requirements that UL 3700 poses or requires. Do you see any reason for distinguishing between sort of small mom and pop landlords and larger landlords? Is there any reason why we do that?
I don't. I mean, I think my ask would be just permissive across the board and not tie it to a number of units. I don't know why Virginia went with that cutoff. There probably was testimony somewhere as to why they did it. But I think you would see the same challenges in a single family home that's a rental, or a duplex that's a rental, or even a 10 unit that's a rental. So I don't see that there should be a distinction between those two, a number of units being the cutoff.
And I guess the idea was, I don't know, but I guess the idea was that smaller landlords, the mom and pop type landlords, this might be more of a challenge for them than larger landlords who are presumed to be more professional,
right?
And have more sort of awareness of requirements. Maybe have people on staff or on retainer who can do repairs or inspections or whatever. That's the only reason I can think of, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think they, as folks' portfolios change with the number of units, I think the challenges just change. And so larger portfolio doesn't necessarily mean more savvy or more staff on board to be able to deal with something like this. So I think that's why my ask would be just not have a unit distinction.
Yeah, okay.
Rep Southworth?
From your members, any concern on how or where these would be installed on the buildings?
For sure. And I think that's why the request is with the permission of the landlord, because that would encompass having those types of conversations. Where is this device going to be installed? Is there an appropriate place for it? Is there an area, you know, this Virginia bill talks about on the exterior of the tenant's premises. There's very few rental properties where a tenant has sort of an exclusive place that they're renting on the exterior of the building, right? So I think, this sounds like a balcony or a porch, right? That's attached to the tenant's unit, which I think we could envision in a property, in Virginia. We don't have very many of those here, that have units with dedicated private spaces for tenants in this regard. So we would be talking about attaching it to the building itself or attaching it to a porch that a tenant shares in common with other residents, something in a backyard. So I think there's a lot more complications and issues just with the way our housing stock is here, is that there's not these exterior locations that are for the exclusive use of tenants in many of these buildings. So citing an item like this could be very challenging.
Thank you.
I think so too.
All right. I'm sorry, did you submit written testimony that,
I did not.
could you? It could be brief.
I'm happy to, I can put together some brief testimony, written testimony, and maybe suggested language for the landlord piece of this.
That'd be really great. I've just found as Bill's moved through the process, people go to look to see, right? It's not just us. People go to look to see what the landlords thought. We're bill reporters, Mike. Go look to see what the landlords thought. So it's just really helpful. It can be a page at the most. We just need to boil down your take on the bill, your recommendations, and if you have suggested language, that would be super great.
Okay, perfect. Not a problem. I will keep it brief. I am not one to write pages and pages of things because we're all busy and just want to get right to the meat of it.
Yeah, we don't need pages and pages. It's really just kind of for the record. Okay. Great. Thanks again for your time.